Lecture 3 focuses on the second stage of the counseling process, assessing client problems. The objective for this lecture are to examine the process by which counselors can assess clients presenting problems and identify relevant information for defining and conceptualizing the problem. The goals of today's lecture are to look at the purpose of assessment, to identify components of the assessment, to briefly discuss clinical assessments with children, to explore effects of assessment on clients, the integration of problem definition, and also we'll conclude with information with treatment planning. So what is the purpose of assessment? Assessment is very important in the early stages of counseling to help the counselor formulate a hypothesis. And so when we talk about formulating a hypothesis, we are wanting to understand what the primary issues are that the client is dealing with. And based upon an understanding of the hypotheses with regard to the client, then you are best able to identify the goals that you would like to achieve as the counselor, and both the counselor and client would develop the alliance to achieve the goals of the counseling process. Also, the assessment process should be a way of recognizing the importance and uniqueness of each person, a way of saying to the person, you are special and I want to get to know you and understand why you are the way you are. So not only are you trying to understand what the primary presenting issues are so that you could formulate the hypotheses and from the hypotheses develop the goals, but you are also conveying to the client that you really have a desire to get to understand who they are as a unique individual and to identify individualized ways of helping the client to overcome his or her problems. Seligman identified 12 ways to enhance the counselor-client relationship. And these issues are really critical in assessing the client's problem. So first, you would like to streamline the information gathering process. Sometimes clients come in, they have a host of information that they'd like to process. For the first time, they have someone who will sit and listen, who has a vested interest in what their issues and concerns are, and they have a lot of information that they would like to share. However, as a counselor with limited sessions, it's important for us to hone in on the most important information. As such, we have to streamline the information gathering process. And we also want to make sure in streamlining the information gathering process that we don't limit what the client shares with us to the extent that we don't have an accurate understanding of the presenting issues. So you want the most germane information relevant to the client in the presenting issues. And from that information, you want to be able to make an accurate diagnosis of what the primary issues are. Number 3, you want to facilitate the development of the treatment plan that is likely to be effective. So in having an understanding of the hypotheses, knowing what the ultimate goals and objectives are, and as we mentioned before, we have the ultimate goal, but we also have the intermediate and the immediate goals that we would like to attend to. But in understanding this information, we want to use this information to understand the specific issues that we would like to address with the client, and we also would like to develop the treatment plan so that it will be most effective in dealing with the client's presenting issues. Number 4, we would like to determine the person's suitability for a particular program or treatment. We recognize that not all treatments or interventions are effective with all clients. We have to take into consideration their level of maturity. We have to take into consideration the level of cognitive development, emotional development, and we want to make sure that we identify treatment strategies that are most effective for the client and their particular needs. We also want to make sure that the treatment strategies that are used are culturally relevant and appropriate for the client. Otherwise, when we utilize treatment strategies that are ineffective, we find that the client is less likely to matriculate and be successful in their treatment process. Number 5, we want to simplify goal setting and measurement of the progress. As I mentioned in our previous lecture, it's important not to exceed 3 goals. More than 3 goals becomes way too much to achieve in the counselor-client process, particularly if you think about the fact that if you're meeting with a client in a mental health context, they're usually limited to the number of sessions that you're able to see them. So from that context, you want to make sure that you only identify at maximum 3 goals that are measurable and obtainable. It's always easy to have a client to come back at a later time for additional services for other treatment goals. However, it's important that you set your goals that are limited in scope, that are important to the client's adjustment, but you want to make sure that you could achieve certain results by the end of the specified period of time. We also want to make sure that the goals are measurable. When the client identifies goals that we are unable to measure, it makes it really difficult for us to discern whether or not they have reached the goals or reached the mark that we have set for them. And so number 5 is specific to simplifying goal setting, making sure the goals are relevant, they are quantifiable, and they are measurable. Number 6 states that we must promote insight into a person's personality and clarify their self-concept. So with this particular enhancement, we want to make sure that we have a good understanding of who the client is, what their personality is like. We want to understand what their self-concept is and ways of helping them to grow beyond their current state of being, helping to stretch and grow the consumer or the client to achieve goals and objectives that they were unable to achieve on their own. Number 7 of the 12 ways in which we can enhance the counselor-client process in terms of assessing the client problems is to assess the environment or context. And it's important for us to understand that when we are working with clients, they do not function within a vacuum. They are members of systems, they live within environments, and they function within a broader environment or context. And so in order to effectively understand the issues and the presenting problems that exist for the client, it is therefore important that we assess environmental issues or barriers as well as the context of these issues in order to help the client to overcome these barriers and to maximize their potential in life. Number 8 states that we must promote more relevant and focused counseling and discussion. This process suggests that clients are very unique individuals, that we want to promote the discussion of issues and provide a counseling focus that is very individualized, that is specific to the needs and the issues of your client, that is relevant to them. One of the things that is most important and that I've learned early on as a therapist is that there is no cookie cutter approach to working with clients. They are all different. They bring unique issues and they have unique needs and concerns. And so it's important that when we work with clients that we make sure it's individualized, that it's relevant, that it's not a one-size-fit-all, but identifying strategies and skills that are most relevant to the client that we're working with. And we want to have our discussions and process issues that are most relevant to the client. And it's not, we have to allow the client's issues, concerns to govern and guide the services that we provide, rather than as counselors being more objective oriented and objective driven. With number 9, we want to indicate the likelihood that certain events will happen, such as success in occupational or academic endeavors. And as a clinician, I always like to make sure that clients understand that the work that has to be done is not easy, that there is an opportunity for success. However, it does take commitment and hard work. I never want students to think that overcoming issues that have plagued them for many years are easy to overcome. But I also want them to understand that with their hard work and commitment to the therapeutic process, that I too am committed to helping them to overcome any burdens or issues that might limit their potential. Number 10, we want to promote the translation of interests, abilities, and personality dimensions into occupational terms. When we work with clients, particularly in occupational or academic endeavors, we want to make sure that clients are understanding of the full extent of opportunities that are in line with their interests, their abilities, and their personality dimensions. Sometimes clients come in and they might say, this is what I want to do. I want to be a cashier, or I want to be a secretary. But they may, with our help, come to realize that they are capable of far more than they might give themselves credit for. So as counselors, it is always our responsibility to assist the client in seeing beyond their current interests, abilities, and personality dimensions, and help again to stretch and grow clients to explore opportunities, occupations, as well as academic endeavors that they may not have considered in the past. Number 11, we want to generate options and alternatives. We want to help clients to look at options and alternatives from different perspectives. And I also know that sometimes clients can be very limited in their perspectives. They can see things from a very limited vantage point. And as counselors, we have the skills, the knowledge, and the ability to assist clients in exploring opportunities and alternatives and options that they didn't see at their disposal before. So just helping the client to explore new horizons in very positive ways is a very growth-producing experience, because what it says to the client is that you are capable of doing over and beyond what you sometimes believe your limitations are. Number 12, we want to facilitate planning and decision making with our clients, helping clients to understand the value of planning activities, formulating plans, executing the plans, and coming up with important decision making skills is also very important. And many of these issues are translational. They translate into the daily lives and existence of our clients. And so when a client is able to maximize and understand strategies that are put before them in the counseling process, they can also translate these same skills and abilities into other areas of their lives. And so while we may be focusing on producing growth in specific areas, I'm a firm believer that if you can produce growth in one particular area, there is the ability for the growth to also permeate other areas as well. There are various components of assessment that are very important, and the first component that we'll be discussing is the fact that assessment refers to anything counselors do to gather information and to draw conclusions about clients' concerns. And so oftentimes when we think of assessments, sometimes we think of the more objective paper pencil kinds of assessments. We might think of the Vineland or the MMPI or the WACE. And sometimes assessments may take on other forms. We might gain information by talking to family members, by talking to school teachers, by talking to peer leaders. And so assessments take on various forms, and it's important to understand that as counselors, we gather information in the assessment process by using various venues, and so we aren't limited by some of the more objective kinds of assessments. And while those are very important, sometimes we have to go beyond what we're used to and talk with family members, talk with children, talk with maybe pastors or other important leaders within that client's environment. And some of the research that I've done specific to other cultures, they might include spiritual healers in the process. And so when we look at assessment and collecting important information, this too has to be culturally relevant to the client so that we can make sure that we maximize and optimize information from all relevant sources. We also want to make sure that all the major components of the assessment occur early in the counseling process. Some degree of assessment goes on continuously during counseling. However, we want to make sure that at the onset of the counseling process that we have collected the necessary information to guide the therapeutic process. So we are always in the process of information gathering, making assessments about what are the critical issues impacting the client and how clients respond to some of these critical issues. However, early on, it is important for us to obtain the major components of assessment, which helps to inform the goal setting process and also the treatment planning process. So in understanding the components and the various ways in which we collect information, one of the first and primary ways that we collect information is in the intake or history interviews. Oftentimes with the intake, that is when the client will first call in for services. And if we are the ones to receive the call, that is the first point at which we begin to build rapport with the client and start to gather relevant information for the treatment process. And so it's important to understand that component one, the first initial component of information gathering, may be in ways that we're not always as cognizant of. It could be when the client first calls in for services. And so it's important that whoever is the person receiving the calls of our clients or consumers, that person will greet the consumer with a friendly, warm demeanor, gather relevant information, and also convey to the consumer or client that they are calling the right place to receive the necessary services that they're interested in receiving. So with component 1, intake or history interviews, the counselors are interested primarily in obtaining information about the range or scope of the client's problems and about aspects of the client's background and their present situation that might relate to the problems. So you are, as the counselor, you are collecting lots of relevant information pertaining to the client's problem. You're trying to understand their background. You're trying to understand relevant issues that contribute to the problems that the client is experiencing. And it's through a careful understanding of the myriad issues that all relate to the client's problems that you're also able to identify treatment strategies that are effective. Because the effectiveness of our treatment is predicated on obtaining the requisite information. And that happens during the intake process as well as the history gathering process. And again, it's important to realize that we must streamline the process. Oftentimes, the initial intake is limited to one session because of the fact that clients are limited in the number of sessions where they can come in for your services. So because of the time limitations and the session limitations, it's important that the initial intake or the history interview not exceed more than one session. So the counselor must assume responsibility and control over the interview. No attempt is made to make it a therapeutic session for the client. So the goal is information gathering. It's usually limited to 1 hour. And when we talk about it being a therapeutic session, it's not the opportunity to get into the deeper level kinds of issues, processing intense feelings or emotions. It's actually an opportunity of gaining and gleaning an understanding of the issues and presenting problems, so that from these problems we can identify treatment goals and objectives, and also the intervention to best meet the needs of the client's problems. The counselor gives the client an explanation about the purpose and the nature of the initial session. So what this means is that when the client comes in for services, you give them an overview of what the therapeutic process is. For me as a counselor, I always like to tell the consumer or the client who I am, what my skills and expertise are, what they can expect from the therapeutic process, what I expect from them, and any other relevant information about the therapeutic process. I also go over the limits of confidentiality so clients can have a clear understanding of when I must breach confidentiality. So you want to make sure that you give a client an explanation about the purpose of the services that are being provided and the nature of the initial session, which is primarily information gathering and understanding what the critical issues or presenting problems are. If the client is in crisis during the first interview, the intake is not conducted and the counselor addresses issues related to the crisis instead. And so the primary issue with regard to the crisis is making sure that the client is stable. Until the client is stable at their normal level of functioning, the information with regard to the first interview is far less important. And also, it's important to make notice here that if the client is in crisis, sometimes it requires that you bring in other professionals, other experts. Sometimes it might mean having the client admitted into an outpatient or inpatient treatment facility. It might also entail bringing in other family members or community resources. So once you have a thorough understanding of the client's presenting issues in the information gathering process, particularly the initial intake interview, the next step is to write up the information that was gathered. And in writing up the initial intake interview, you want to avoid psychological jargon. You want to write up the report or to write up the initial interview in a way that any layperson can pick it up and understand exactly what you're speaking about. So you want to avoid psychological jargon. You want to avoid elaborate inferences. You want to provide specific detail, usually more objective kinds of information, as well as you want to provide some of the subjective information that is relevant from the initial intake interview. You also want to include assessments that are justified, both psychologically as well as legally. You don't want to promote assessments that are not germane to the treatment that is being provided or that are not germane to the client's presenting issues. So only identify assessments that are justifiable, both psychologically as well as legally. So within the intake interview, you want to be sure that you include identifying data. You want to make sure that you understand who the client is and information that best describes the client. So you want identifying data, age, where they reside, whether there are any offsprings that reside in the home. You want to discuss the presenting problems, both the primary as well as secondary presenting issues. You want to identify the client's current life setting, what is the background or the context for the client's daily functioning. You want to understand the family history, and sometimes in understanding the family history, you may want to use a genogram, which helps you to identify who the key family members are, any critical issues or issues related to substance use or abuse that has existed through the different generations. So genograms are very important tools to use when collecting family history and making connections that exist across generations. You also want to have a personal history. Have a personal history of the client, understanding what some of the key issues in the client's life would have been some of their major life changes or life events that have occurred. Number 6, you would like to have a description of the client during the interview. Are they calm? Are they emotional? Are they pleasant? Are they nervous? Are they fidgeting? Do they maintain good eye contact? Are they tearful? Are they do they seem coherent, personable? Just providing a rich description of the client during the interview. And last but not least, you want to provide a summary of what the primary issues are and recommendations. And so in talking about the summary, you want to, this is where you start getting into the primary goals, the ultimate goals, or the primary issues relevant to the client, and the primary treatment issues that you would like to focus your services, and then the recommendations for such treatment. The second component of the process to assess the client's problems is the problem definition. You want to have a definition of the problem. And what do I mean when I talk about a problem definition? Well, a problem definition involves a more specific definition of the problem. It involves specific details regarding the nature and the context of the presenting problems that will be explored. This is also known as the presenting problem, and it provides details that are presented initially by the client. So what is the presenting problem? What is the nature of these problems? What are the contexts by which these problems exist? What are some of the issues that exacerbate the problems or make the problems better? What are some of the resolutions or the solutions that have been tried in the past? What has the client tried? What has worked? What has not worked? What exacerbates the problem? So in understanding what the presenting problem is, or the problem definition, it entails that we really have a strong understanding of what the presenting problem is. And sometimes it's more than one problem, but like I've said before, it's definitely no more than three. And sometimes a problem could have several sub issues associated with it. So maybe ultimately the client, the presenting problem is finding a job. That might be the primary presenting issue. But along with finding a job, we also recognize that a person has to have a stable living environment. They have to have transportation. They have to have clothing that is appropriate for the employment setting. And so sometimes there are those more intermediate kinds of issues that must be addressed before we can tackle the primary issue, which is finding gainful employment. It also involves the use of additional information. So sometimes as clinicians, when understanding the problem or the definition or the presenting issue, we are required to obtain additional information. Sometimes it means contacting a former employer. Sometimes it means obtaining school records. It might mean getting the client to sign a release of information and receiving information from their previous treating clinician. Sometimes it means obtaining the necessary information from their healthcare provider. So as practitioners, as counselors, it's important to have a really good understanding of the presenting problem, and we have to recognize when we need additional information to solidify what we believe to be the primary issues. So continuing along the lines of understanding the client's problems, there are areas to explore in reaching a useful understanding of what the client's presenting issues are. And the first area is understanding the various components of the problem. This usually entails ways to which the problems manifest itself primarily and secondarily. Because usually problems cause is the root cause of various other issues. And sometimes there are primary issues, sometimes there are secondary issues. So if we consider the issue of employment, let's say the primary presenting issue that the client comes with is seeking employment. And so we recognize that there are some primary issues as well as secondary issues associated with employment, or the lack thereof. And so when you consider the issues of employment, what are some of the primary issues associated with the lack of employment? Well, when we are unemployed, we do not have any resources. We don't have the financial resources that are required to pay our bills. We don't have the resources needed to be able to buy food and clothing and maintain shelter. And so the primary needs are those the primary things that we need for our daily existence. There are also some secondary needs that we have. Employment also provides an opportunity for interaction. It provides an opportunity for us to go through our days in a meaningful way. It provides an opportunity to be a contributing member of society. So when we understand the components of the problem, we understand that there are some primary issues, and the primary issues usually have to do with such issues, some of the most key issues in our daily existence: food, clothing, shelter, love, respect. And then there are secondary issues, interaction with others, finding meaning in our daily existence. Number two, there is a pattern of contributing events. Problems don't occur in isolation. There are usually contributing factors that relate to the client's problems. And so it's important that you understand what some of the contributing events or patterns with regard to the client's problems. And this can be the client helping to identify any patterns or sequence of events that seem to lead up to the problem and also maintain it. So what are some of the precursors to the problem? What makes the problem worse? What exacerbates the problem? What limits the problem? So identifying some of the patterns, some of the sequence of events that might seem to lead up to the problem, also issues that might exacerbate it or cause the problem to exist beyond what would be typical. Number three, in understanding the client's problem, one of the things that we must understand is the duration of the problem. How long has the problem existed? This helps us to understand the extent to which the concern disturbs the client and or interferes with the client's everyday functioning. So how long has the problem been in existence? Is another critical issue that we need to understand in order to address the client's presenting issue. Number four, we also want to understand the client's coping skills, strengths, and resources. What are the issues that exacerbate the problem? What makes the problem worse? How has the client coped in the past? What do they do in handling this presenting issue? What are some of the strengths that exist within the client's environment? They may come from a supportive environment. They may have the support of family members or persons within their community. They may have the financial resources. They might know other people within the community from whom they could gain the resources in order to overcome whatever the presenting issues are. And so again, we must understand what the client's coping skills are, understand the strengths that exist for the client, as well as any resources that exist within the community or within the client's environment.